All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Krebs. I'm the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency at the Department of Homeland Security. I hope you're enjoying the simulated virtual Black Hat. I know we're all disappointed that we're not in Las Vegas this year. Instead, I'm coming to you live from, or taped rather, from Springfield, Virginia. Tried to make this as real as possible. So last night I skipped dinner. Stayed until 5 a.m., smoked a pack of cigarettes, drank a bunch of Red Bull, flushed a bunch of money down the toilet. Then I got up and I walked 5 miles down here in 90-degree heat. So I'm feeling Vegas right now. Hopefully the rest of the content will come across. So CISA, we're the youngest federal agency. We're responsible for civilian cybersecurity, and that includes leading the nation's critical infrastructure protection activities. What I'm going to talk to you about today are our efforts to secure federal elections, election security. Pretty significant undertaking right now with the 2020 election just a few months away at this point. What I want to talk about is where we were in 2016, where we are today in the run-up to 2020, and then talk about what we actually have to do to get ready, left to get ready for 2020 and then beyond. So let me start with 2016. So just about this time 4 years ago, June, July, August, it was becoming readily apparent, very clear that Russia was intent on disrupting the 2016 election through a variety of techniques. Cybersecurity, targeting election infrastructure, hack and leak attacks on political campaigns, and launching a broader influence and disinformation operation. So in response, the federal government mobilized. But I think if you talk to anybody that was in my seat or comparative roles in the last administration, I don't think anybody would necessarily have been happy with the constructs, with the mechanisms that they had ready to go. So really, there are three elements of 2016 that I think are important to keep in mind. First is, again, there was an ad hoc response that was pulled together just based on a lack of existing structures. Nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't a top priority at the time because it wasn't clear that there was a threat prior to last summer or to that summer. Second, well, just to be frank, the Russians likely targeted all 50 states. It wasn't one state, it wasn't two states, it wasn't swing states. They did research on all 50 states. So this was a broad campaign. And then I think the third thing to keep in mind, the most important likely, is that there's no information based on what's available to us that they were able to affect a single vote, to change a single vote through cybersecurity or cyber means. Nothing's changed on that front, honestly. We still don't have any information, intelligence otherwise, that would suggest that they're in a position or have a capability to do that. So let's roll it back. Why was it an ad hoc response? Well, again, there wasn't a dedicated approach written down on a piece of paper historically on election security. The security research community, particularly the bubbas that would typically be down the street at DEF CON in the villages, sure, absolutely, they've been aware of risks to voting equipment for a decade or more. But again, there were no dedicated structures, mechanisms, ISACs for election security purposes. So they pulled something together, DHS, the FBI, the intelligence community, NSA, and others, got what they could, pulled it together, and launched what was from a cybersecurity perspective, a successful defense of the 2016 election. Now, given that targeting, given that broad understanding of what the Russians attempted, they put a playbook out there. The Chinese were able to see it, the Iranians, the North Koreans, cyber criminals, everybody understood that this was a target set that would generate a lot of activity. And that takes me to, I think, my final point on 2016 election security issues, the implications of what transpired in 2016. I've talked about it before and think I actually talked about it last year out in Vegas. That was almost a Sputnik moment. Take yourself back to 1957, or put yourself in the shoes of someone in 1957, when the Soviets put Sputnik into low Earth orbit. Why was that such a significant undertaking? Yeah, they got there before us, but there was another element. How did Sputnik get up there? It was effectively attached to an intercontinental ballistic missile. For the first time, the Soviets had the capability to reach out and touch us. The oceans to our west and our east and across the top no longer gave us that geographic isolation that we had worked for, that had protected us for years and years. They had the ability to disrupt in 1957. Now in 2016, using cyber techniques, they were once again able to reach out and touch us and give us that uncertainty. They could use cyber techniques to destabilize and ultimately potentially undermine democracy. Prior to that point, cybersecurity incidents were intellectual property theft, a bad movie, financial crimes. But this was something much more visceral. So we knew that we had a lot at stake for 2018, that we had a lot at stake for 2020. So that brings me forward to today. Where are we today? I think it's a night and day comparison. We have three distinct advantages today than what existed in 2016. First, there's a vibrant election security community. Second, we have a better understanding of risk and enhanced risk mitigation techniques across election infrastructure. Again, night and day between what existed in 2016. And finally, we have better visibility across the systems that support the administration of elections. I think it's important to keep in mind that my team, that the rest of the federal government, from an election security perspective, is here in support of state and local election officials. Under the Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, they're responsible for the time, place, and manner of elections. We are there to support them. So what did we do? 2017 and on, we helped foster this vibrant election security community. One of the first things that we did was pull together an information sharing and analysis center. Today, all 50 states and close to 7,000 jurisdictions across this country get some kind of benefit, whether it's threat information, best practices, strategic information on election security issues. It's the fastest growing ISAC in the history of ISACs. That's a good thing. We also have been providing services, technical capabilities out there to our partners. And how do we do that? Well, we've also pulled together mechanisms like our Sector Coordinating Council that pulls together all levels of government, federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, private sector, security researchers, bring everyone together to analyze issues, analyze trends, pull together best practices. As the Congress appropriates money for election security grants, we've been able to develop investment guidance on how they can best buy down risk. And it's not just sitting there taking a guess. We use the techniques, the tools, the services that we've provided over the last couple years to inform that guidance. We've conducted risk assessments, penetration testing. We understand generally across the board what the shortcomings and challenges are, and we've tailored that guidance specifically to those officials. This risk understanding is also better, as I mentioned. So in 2016, we didn't know how these elections were run. We didn't understand the different techniques, the different mechanisms, different processes, the different systems that were in place across the states. We've invested significant resources, not just analyzing these, but working with our partners to understand the systems they use. They told us what their issues were. So based on this risk guidance, we've been able to invest in capabilities and risk management techniques. One of the best risk management techniques right now, paper. We have from day one encouraged states to shift to some system that has a paper record associated with every vote. That's important. In 2016, 80% of votes cast had a paper record associated with the vote. For 2020, we're on track for 92%. And actually, we might even do a little bit better, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. Why is it so important to have a paper ballot associated with the vote? Auditability. Everyone in this crowd should understand the importance of auditability. The ability to effectively go back and check the logs. You have the receipt. You can understand what transpired if you see something that's suspicious or otherwise anomalous. We need to go back and check the records. That's what the paper ballot gives us. So with that understanding of risk, with those techniques that we've instituted, the last bit is we have better visibility across the election sector, frankly, than likely any other sector in the critical infrastructure space. How did we do that? Well, starting back in 2016, we worked to understand what the challenges were that election officials faced. I've talked about that. What we didn't have was trust. We've worked significantly across the last couple of years to develop a trusted relationship with our state and local election officials. That has allowed us to partner with them to give them tools and capabilities, including intrusion detection systems, that they could then deploy across their networks. At this point, in the run-up to the 2020 election, we have IDS, our IDS system, the Albert monitors, across all 50 states. In some states, we have total coverage of every county. Florida, for example, 67 counties all have Albert sensors deployed, where we can load them up with the signatures, they can alert on activity, we can investigate, and we can ensure the security of the 2020 election. That visibility, again, gives us the confidence that 2020 will be the most protected, most secure election in modern history. So when we think about what's next, we have to look forward to November 2020. We've done a lot. We've invested a lot. We have capabilities, but there's more to do. For one, we have to continue preparing for a capable disruptive actor. We also have to recognize that change is in the air, literally COVID, changing the way that elections happen across this country. Lastly, you come into play here. We have to have an informed, patient voter. So let's take it back to the top. Capable disruptive adversaries. At this point in 2016, we had done a number of incident responses. We had intelligence that gave us a good understanding of what the adversary was doing. Today in 2020, based on our visibility, based on the intelligence, the focused mission of the intelligence community, the NSA, cybercom's efforts, we are still looking around to see if, in particular the Russians, but also the Chinese, the Iranians, and North Koreans, or others, are targeting our infrastructure. Based on that visibility, we see activity on a daily basis. We can't attribute it directly to any state adversary or state actor, but there's a whole lot of scanning going on. Absolutely. But again, nothing at the directed, focused effort of 2016. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a little paranoid. So I'm not resting on my laurels. I'm looking at what else is happening out there. I see ransomware attacks happening on a regular basis, not just at state and local governments, schools, hospitals, and also financial institutions and elsewhere. So when I look at the remaining time between now and November, I'm thinking about that ransomware actor. I'm thinking about what we need to do to protect those at-risk systems, when they would be at their highest level of risk, and what we can do in the meantime. That's why last year we launched a voter registration database ransomware initiative to work with our partners in state, local, and the private sector to secure those systems. Better configuration, multi-factor authentication, doing the basics right. But there's a second piece of this. It's not always about the systems. It's not always about the people. Sometimes it's about the processes. So what we're doing is, in addition to protecting those systems and giving state and locals the support they need to harden their infrastructure, we're also looking at the failover mechanisms. What are those resilience measures? What everybody in this room knows is a good backup can't be beaten. So analog backups at the state level, at the county level, at the individual precinct levels. So if something goes wrong that might hit a voter registration database, or a poll book for that matter, you can flip to that stack of paper to ensure that the voters can vote, whether it's in early voting or actually on election day, that the voters can vote. And if anything else goes wrong, you've also got provisional ballots. So again, we're encouraging not just the hardening of the systems, but those resilience measures, those analog measures that will increase the resilience of the process, the administration of elections writ large. Now, we talked about those IDS, those Albert sensors that are out there. We can't stop there either. This summer, we're rolling out a pilot program across the country to introduce endpoint detection and response capabilities in a number of jurisdictions. We got to push it out to the edge, get capabilities on individual hosts, whether it's forensics, incident response. We have to continue raising the level of security across our election community. Again, this goes to that vibrant election security community I talked about at the beginning. Now, in terms of COVID, well, that's why we're doing this. That's why I'm here in Springfield, Virginia, coming to you across the internet. COVID is changing the way elections happen. There's no question about that. That became very clear in February when we were all out in San Francisco for another conference. We knew that COVID was changing the complexion of elections. It was going to change how the voting process would happen in person, social distancing, masking, PPE, disinfecting, throwing away pins. We knew that that was going to change the way elections would happen. So we immediately partnered with CDC and HHS, again, through those coordination mechanisms that we developed years ago, to pull everybody together, develop guidance, develop plans. So over the last several months, we've issued a significant amount of guidance through our coordinating councils. But it's not just about the in-person voting. Many states have adopted changes in the way the vote will take place. And that includes adopting absentee and mail-in balloting. So we talked about that 80% and 92% shift. Well, you might say, hey, 92% is not good enough. How do we get to 100? Well, adopting some of these new technologies takes time. It takes training. It takes money. One state in particular, New Jersey, had not been able to identify the money to replace their systems. They have those direct recording equipment machines that don't have a paper ballot associated with the vote. So they spent resources. We've been supporting securing those systems in the back end in other ways. But again, these machines still work. Now, because of COVID, they've decided to adopt to a more mail-in or absentee ballot approach. So we may see that 92% of paper ballots associated with the 2020 vote actually increase. Again, auditability, that enables us to roll back the tape and determine what happened and conduct meaningful post-election audits. So we will continue working over the next several months as the COVID pandemic evolves to introduce guidance to ensure that you as the voter have information. And that's I think the last important thing to talk about here. The last measure of resilience in the 2020 election is going to be an informed, patient voter. It's going to take time to count the vote, whether it's absentee ballots coming in, whether it's longer lines, whatever it takes, it's going to take a little bit more time. So on November 3rd, it's quite possible that we won't know who won the election. So that's why we need you, we need everyone to be a more patient voter, to wait until the vote is certified and we know who the winner is. Again, it takes a little bit more time this go around because of COVID, but that's okay. So in the meantime, we need informed voters too. I assume that just about every voter out there, particularly everyone that's watching this that's going to vote here in the US, something's going to change about the way you vote. Something will have changed from 2018 or 2016. Whether it's a new polling location, I know I tend to vote in a school. Schools may not be available. Some people vote in long-term care facilities. Those will not likely be available. Public institutions, fire departments, again, might not be available. So it's up to you to identify how you're going to vote. Have a plan. We've been talking about having voting plans for years now. It's that much more important right now. Understand how your voting process has changed. You may want to take advantage of early voting. If your state allows for other kinds of voting like absentee or mail, you need to research that. You need to make sure you get your information in and your vote in by the deadline. But most importantly, have a little bit of patience. This one's going to be worth it. So with that, please be a part of the solution. Be a part of the nation's this vibrant election security community. We're all out there to defend democracy. So join us CISA, join us in the state and local election community, because what we're doing is defending today, but we're securing tomorrow too. So thanks a lot.